Hello and welcome to Girls, Gays, Animes. I'm your host Valsaraptor and I'm here with my two co-hosts Mim and DokiDokiBunBun. Today we are talking about fanfic. I know little to nothing about fanfic other than recalling like a fever dream writing it in like middle school, and I don't remember what it was about or anything, but I know that Mim is here to be our expert and Doki is going to pretend like she knows nothing about it whatsoever. It is a lie.
I've never even heard of fanfic until right today.
What's that?
I couldn't tell you. Are they books, Mim?
If you go on Etsy, they might be. That's also a problem. We'll get there. All right. And sorry if I'm like playing with the stupid AirPod will not stay in my ear. That's cool. We're just gonna pretend that that's a thing. Okay.
You're just cute and coy playing with your ear.
You're like, oh no, is it me? We're talking about fanfic. Oh.
Yeah, and I've been reading fanfic probably since I don't even know. Like elementary, not even elementary.
I was hoping for an aggressively low age. Like I was like 6 years
early
old.
Middle school. Probably early middle school. Once fanfiction.net became a thing, and I started getting like back into anime and probably also like Neopets. I think there's a what's the word I'm looking for? There's like a slippery slope. There's a what is it called? Not a pathway, but there's, you start at one thing and you end at another. It was like I was on Neopets. There was a role play board. I got introduced to more anime on the role play board. More anime led to me looking up fan fiction, and the rest is history.
I know a lot of people who could probably also correlate their fan fiction time around Neopets time. I don't think that's that like strange of a stretch. I think that's probably a common thread for a lot of the youth. Not me, of course. But.
No. Definitely not.
So fanfiction.net was launched in 1998. So before the 2000s, it's old. It is one of the oldest, like,
it's not that old. Websites. I mean, let's calm down. So I'd say it's pretty young.
It's in the 90s. That's older than most websites I would say that we currently use or anything. That's still active. I mean, active-ish. I haven't been on fanfiction.net in a long time. I mean, I think most people now either use Wattpad. Okay. I use AO3. I use Archive of Our Own, also known as AO3, which I think is like kind of the go-to next to Wattpad at this point.
Yeah.
So, so I had a couple of things that I was going to bring up, but you're gonna have to at least try to pretend like you know what I'm talking about.
I can try.
You can try. Okay. At least you can try. But like, what got you into fan fiction?
So for me, it was not getting the content I wanted out of anime. So there were two main triggers for me. The biggest one was like the couples that I wanted to ship were taking too long to ship. And I was like, I just want to read that they finally hold hands. Like, how hard is that? And so that was like my biggest thing was like wanting, embarrassing enough, but like wanting to see like Natsu and Lucy and Fairy Tail just finally shut up and hold hands. Or I would be really unhappy with who someone would ship with. And I was like, this is stupid. I'm going to go find smart people who know who people should end up with. Like, in Inuyasha, I was furious because I thought Inuyasha sucked and Kukuomi could do better. So I was like, I'm going to go to the internet where people know what's going on. And so, like, for me, those were the two main reasons. It's because I wasn't getting what I wanted from the anime. And I was like, someone has to have done this.
Like I said, I don't ever remember like reading fanfic, and I remember that I wrote it, and what I wrote, I believe, was Harry Potter fanfic.
That checks out.
And so, because like the only like anime I watched in my youth was like Yu-Gi-Oh! And I'm sure there's some banging Yu-Gi-Oh! Fanfic out nowadays.
Oh, there's banging Yu-Gi-Oh! Fanfic, I'm sure.
Yes, it's time to duel, if you will.
Wink.
So that's kind of like I don't have like a huge lore behind it. I just, like I said, my memory's trash. I just know that that's what life was.
What was it for you, Mim? Just Neopets?
I think it was getting into fandoms in general, which I 100% blame on Neopets, because they had, back in the day, I think they got rid of it pretty quickly, was a role play board, which I'm pretty sure they intended to be like role playing as like a Neopet owner. Oh my gosh, my I'll forget some of their names. My Kachik was so cute, and then it ended up, if you go on there, was always like Harry Potter, Inuyasha, and like a couple of other, I think, TV shows. But I maybe trying to think of what other anime was out at that time. But for me, I was really, really into Harry Potter, and I think it was the same thing of not getting what I wanted, because I was really, really fascinated by like not Harry Potter. I actually didn't really like Harry or Hermione or Ron. I kind of like, they're fine. I like the storyline, but they weren't my favorite characters at all. I really liked the Marauders, which would be like James, Remus, Sirius, and Lupin. And I wanted more of that. So there was a lot of role playing going on of like pre-Harry Potter. And when so embarrassing story.
Because none of the rest has been embarrassing for any of us here.
No, this is traumatizing. So I, being, the sly, adorable little middle schooler I was, was 100% on these role play boards, like having Lily Evans, like smooch Remus Lupin or something like that. It's totally on par for what a middle schooler would do. Nothing.
I didn't know people talk to people on Neopets. I thought we were all just playing the fairy bubble game.
Oh, yes, that too. My dad, who was very internet savvy, caught me on like these role play boards, and I got a really long talking to about talking to strangers.
Fair, honestly, fair. You're smooching random. I played Neopets still in college. Like, I was still playing Neopets in college. You could have been smooching some college kid on Neopets.
I know.
Honestly, like, good on your parent. Like, I would be so mad.
Good on my parents. I felt like I was exchanging personal information.
You were exchanging smooches.
I was exchanging smooches with Remus Lupin, so...
with 43-year-old Remus Lupin.
Oh my gosh.
In their mother's basement.
Oh my god. So, obviously I was, and then they got rid of the role play board in general, so I was kind of like... Yeah, exactly. So I was kind of shit out of luck, so I ended up going on to like fanfiction.net to kind of feed my desire to know more and learn more about that fandom and whatnot. Yeah. That's kind of where that led. And then I've just been reading it nonstop ever since. I think I wrote some stuff probably back in middle school and high school that I'm sure is buried in the depths of hell at this point.
I'll find it. Send me any nicknames you've ever gone by. I'll find it.
Any aliases? We're putting it in the chat too.
I don't want to. Okay. And then I didn't really do much. I got more back into role playing, I think, now that I was an actual adult, and got more into role playing again, using things like, was Omegle. When Omegle was out, I would find like role play partners on Omegle, and you'd have to use certain hashtags, or not the video chat. You do the audio, you do the text chat, and you'd use different. Yeah, no,
that's a little better.
Chat. And I, at this point, I was an adult. I was in college. So I'm like,
okay.
So
that is better, at least.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You're an adult.
And you would look up other people in the fandom. You do hashtag. I'm pretty sure it was like Hetalia at this point. So I was like using like Hetalia hashtags, relationship hashtags, and you'd find people that were most likely also college-aged girls. So I would say fan fiction and role play are very heavily like female-dominated areas. Or female presenting dominated areas.
That like TikTok trend where it's like, I'm Samantha, it's like
I'm Samantha.
Yeah, that's what I'm picturing. But it is interesting, like hearing you be like, yeah, I started this when I was in middle school and I moved on to college. How embarrassing. Because I'm like, I didn't start reading this stuff until I was like basically almost in college. And that feels more embarrassing to me. Like starting when you're young feels way less embarrassing than being like, I'm almost a fully formed adult. I'm going to go read about anime characters holding hands.
So I think,
See?
I would say there's a lot of misconception that comes with fan fiction, and fanfiction seems as something that is really juvenile. It's something that like is written, you look at it, you're like, oh my god, this is written by a
12-year-old.
Exactly. And a lot of it is, but a lot of it also, you have to understand, has some of the greatest written works I've ever read have been fan fiction, and they use characters that don't belong to them, so they can't publish these works. But a lot of these works have such great character development that is almost like it's almost a little bit sad, because you're looking at it and then you go back to what it actually came from and you're like, oh my god, these characters, some 20 something develop these characters better in 40,000 words in a 20 chapter fan fiction than this person's done in like 20 years of developing this fandom. So it's really fascinating, and it's really interesting to see how good people write, how well people write, but they'll never get money from it. You can't get money from it. Legally, you can't get money from it, which is, that's the whole thing.
To your point, because I think there's a lot of misconceptions about fan fiction around like the content of it as well. Because like we've joked about it before, and like right up before this call, my fiance was looking at someone's library on Wattpad, don't know who it belongs to, but he was like, oh my goodness, I didn't expect these to be like so wholesome and precious. And I was like, not all fan fiction is smut. Like everyone is convinced it's just a bunch of people raw dogging, like, and doing all this stuff.
Okay, so we'll mark this as 18 plus.
What? We said bad words already. We've already said bad words. Why can't I say that?
I love that you're like, they're not all spicy, but then you use like that as the descriptor for like how people like are reading like soft stuff.
I don't know how it's not. I didn't say any bad words.
But you should pre-market anyways, because once we get into like terminology, I feel like there's no way around talking about certain terminology.
Mm-hmm.
But like to that point, like everything I've ever read is literally just like they smooched under the sunset and held hands as they walked off into the abyss. And like there's stuff that isn't even about relationships. Like it's not even all romance stuff. But a lot of people, I think, have this connotation that it's just a bunch of perverts like on Wattpad. Which, don't get me wrong, there are a lot of perverts on Wattpad, but it's not all perverts on Wattpad.
Mm-hmm. And I think it has a lower threshold of access than something like fan art. Like fan art takes a really, really long time to get good at. And even then, it's like you're constantly improving. It's constantly really hard. Writing, even though it is hard, it is something that like a lot of people obviously grow up, you have more practice doing because you've gone to school, you've practiced writing in school, you've practiced reading in school.
More life experience.
So there is a lower threshold for it. So for people that want to explore more of their fandom, they don't have to like, spend hours looking through Pinterest of these, two characters. They can write it.
Mm-hmm.
And it's fascinating. I honestly think that me reading fan fiction, me writing fan fiction is really what helped me a lot with reading and writing. Like I got a near perfect score on the English portion of my SATs because
humble brag.
Listen, we're not going to talk about my math score. We won't talk about my math score, and that's why I had to take the ACTs like 3 times. But my English score was always good because I love
because of fanfic.
I read all the time. It's just not like paperback books, because sometimes like the paperback books, honestly, sometimes they don't go the way I want them to go, and I feel upset and annoyed. And then I literally just go to the fan fiction version of that fandom or of whatever's there, and I'm like, oh yeah, exactly. This is how it should have gone.
Yeah, I agree.
Exactly.
I second that.
And so I think going on with fan fiction, I want to kind of take it back to beginning because fan fiction has been around since like the 60s and 70s before the internet. The first fan fiction that ever came out was Star Trek fan fiction.
Shocker.
Absolute shocker. I think even
horny nerds.
Hey, we just talked about this.
I think even before then, there is references to like Sherlock having fan fiction because people would rewrite the story of Sherlock and Sherlock Holmes and Watson and going on different adventures. And that's fan fiction. You're using somebody else's work as, kind of a jumping off point. And obviously back then it was a lot different. It was easier for companies and for like copyright offices and whatnot to kind of keep tabs on what was being written because they had magazines where people could write in their own stories and it would have to go through kind of like a checking system through like whoever ran the magazine, and the people who owned Star Trek would have to like actually, check off and make sure that this was okay to be published. So it's really fascinating that it came from there. And then once the internet came, it's kind of like, what you gonna do? It's very much a free for all at this point. Unless you're
I'm muted,
right.
but I was gonna say, I think what's interesting though is like when you were looking up the history of fanfic, where I guess did like doujinshi like fit into that, like the Japanese like fanfic where people are like writing and publishing it and bringing it to like conventions and selling it there, like is it just like our fanfic started in the 60s?
I actually I'm gonna do a little research on that. Honestly, you're so correct because I didn't even think about that. Like honestly, I was thinking about fan fiction, but you're right. Doujinshi is also fan fiction.
It's fanfic. Yeah.
It's literally the best of both worlds.
Japanese know how to do fanfic. They're like writing it.
Fan fiction's an American disease.
We're here to talk about American fanfic only. We founded fanfic.
Doki, have you been to Japan?
Yes.
Okay.
With Valsaraptor.
Oh, that's right. Okay. I couldn't remember.
Not to brag, but she got engaged there and everything.
It's true, I did.
Okay.
Nim did listen to our episode where you just talked about egg sandos the whole time.
Oh, so good.
Yes, I've been to Japan.
But yeah, no, they have entire buildings dedicated to doujinshi. That is such a hard word to say.
Doujinshi?
JoJo's Bizarre Jinshi.
I'd
read that one. I'd read that fanfic.
Sorry.
I just start typing it. I haven't read it. I haven't watched it, but I'll write the fanfic. Just off of pictures I see.
I have told your husband this, Val, but Clamp. The people that wrote Cardcaptor Sakura, XXX Holic, oh gosh, there's a whole bunch. They're pretty much the ones who are involved in our characters are really, really tall and have beautiful clothing.
Yeah.
But their company started with writing doujinshi for JoJo's Bizarre Adventure, where one of them gets egg pregnant.
Nothing really sells Japan for me. Like you telling me the person who made Cardcaptor Sakura started with JoJo's egg pregnancy.
Yep. Okay, so doujinshi originated in Japan. Early days of manga fandom. It was so the earliest one that they have was actually found in 1885.
So exactly the same time as American.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
1885. Okay.
So it's actually interesting because I don't know the legality behind it, because a lot of the reasons it was a lot harder in the US is because it's just copyright.
Copyright laws are different.
Copyright laws are different. I think the mentality also is different of like, obviously I don't know, but like there's a lot of different manga out there. There's a lot of different manga artists that probably don't care as much about fan art and fan works being made about their stuff versus
all publicity is good publicity.
Exactly. Even if
I feel like it's more widely accepted there too, from the standpoint of like they're into like art and like cutesy and like it's more like everything there is like more aesthetic or visually pleasing, where here it's just kind of like, I don't know, it's
Here
a
we're
cultural
weird
thing,
about-
right?
We're weird about owning things too. Like people are so strange holistically, I think, about their ownership of everything. So it's not surprising to me that it would be a lot more accepted somewhere that isn't here. People like control in America.
Yeah. Before we get off the topic of like what started off as fanfic, our book club recently, a year ago, within the last calendar year, read Cinder.
Yeah.
And so Cinder, it's like a space
Retelling.
Cinderella retelling. And it's a series. It's a YA. But the author of that, she actually got the idea for the story. It started off as a Sailor Moon fanfic.
So cool. I love that.
And you can tell like there are like nods to it, and that's not what it is now, obviously. But you can tell the girls that get it.
The Sailor Moon girls get it.
All right, I learned a little bit of something. So
we love that.
We're ready. We're ready.
Okay. I'm going back to the doujinshi thing because I was reading while you were talking. So doujinshi, as far as in the 1800s, it was a term that was made for kind of like privately owned manga that was made by like one person versus a company, and most of it was original work up until like the 1980s, when then it started to do more of like taking other people's like characters and putting them in their own words. So it wasn't more of an original thing. It was kind of like
more like indie manga.
Exactly. And that's kind of what I'm gathering from reading this. It's Wikipedia, so don't, it's not college level accreditation. Like
she's gonna say college humor. It's not dropout level information.
I can't credit this on my
actually.
So, but yeah, that's where. So about in the 1980s, it became much more focused on pre-made works, and using that specifically, it was more focused on like same-sex couples in in those fandoms and whatnot, and
Makes
also sense. 18 plus. So it was more of geared towards that as well.
That makes a lot of sense. So that's interesting. So then the like starting to use more public works to like change the story, it sounds like it started around the same time, kind of.
Yeah.
Everywhere. Or at least the two places, which equals everywhere. That's the whole world.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I guess, so what's interesting about it too, and saying like, oh, it didn't really get didn't get mainstream until the 80s in Japan. But you got to remember, like, that's them like writing and publishing physical copies of it, right?
Yeah.
That's what started in the 80s, and like who knows like what maybe they were calling it, because I don't have that perspective, right? And there's a good chance that there was kind of a bridge between what they're publishing versus writing and sharing with their friends, or because like the doujinshi,
I think that goes
they
for
take it to like
America
cons
too,
and
though.
stuff.
So, I mean, fascinating, honestly. It's really cool. I don't know why I didn't think of doujinshi as also a really big part of fan fiction history.
Yeah.
So, I have a list of questions, and I was looking at them, and now I'm just
We're about to get interrogated.
What was
the first fan fiction you ever read?
Am I?
Oh, I don't remember that.
I do. That. Embarrassing.
Well, share the class. Here we are.
I already said it was Lucy and Natsu. In it, they did like a kissing booth competition for Fairy Tail to raise money because Natsu had gotten the whole place burned down again, and so Natsu and Lucy had to smoosh to earn money to fix the building. Beautiful. It made my little heart very happy.
Beautiful.
It was really wholesome. It was really cute.
Oh my gosh.
They started dating at the end of it.
Obviously.
Yeah, so I guess you guys talked a little bit about like where to find fanfic, but like how has that evolved over the last like 10 plus years? Like, because we haven't always had Wattpad, right?
No.
Wattpad's,
I would argue, fairly new in the fan fiction world, and very convenient even though that means everyone who ever looks at your phone knows that you read fan fiction because there's a giant W on it. But yeah, the way that
They post like non-fanfic stuff though, right?
I mean, so there's like a lot of so like for people out there who enjoy reading like werewolf and vampire and I married a CEO millionaire type stories, like that kind of stuff, that's also on Wattpad. Like if I go to just like the main page, like there's immediately a lot of on my page, like a lot of werewolf stuff. And then like there's also like, it's not just anime or video game fan fiction. Like I'm seeing things on like the top 10 where it's like famous people, like I met this very famous rapper backstage and now we're in love, or I met a football player and now we're in love. So like it's not just the nerd fandom that has fan fiction, but it is all like, from what I know,
One Direction.
Yeah, like there's all kinds of stuff.
So much. There's a lot of real person fan fiction out there, which I think kind of gets into a sketchy kind of territory of when you use real people.
It feels icky to me. No offense to people who like that, but I think it feels icky to like talk about real people like that. Because you don't know them. They have like families and lives, and it is kind of strange.
Yeah, I guess I would disassociate it from the standpoint of like once it's in a work of fiction, it's like they're using that person's background, but it's like not that person anymore. But
I don't know,
my brain is able to like turn it.
If I wrote a fan fiction about you and your husband, I think it would make you uncomfortable to know people read that. Like, because it feels like people have access to like you, and they're picturing you when they're reading like potentially inappropriate scenes, and I don't know.
We're on the internet. People picture us in a lot of ways, whether or not there's fanfic involved.
You trying to get me to quit? You trying to get me to quit? I guess.
Yeah, I guess.
But that feels weird to me. Like I just, you don't know these people. You don't know what I'm really like.
Yeah, but that's the point. It's they're making their own version of you, so it's not you anymore.
Yeah, they're using my.
No. I get what you're saying, but my brain is just like, yeah, but it's not me, so.
Yeah. I think there's also something to be said for when the actual person is like, hey, I need y'all to stop writing creepy fan fiction about me. It's kind of like that at that point. Some people like
don't care.
Some people do not care. I think there was recently a interview with the two hosts of it's a British TV show where they have comedians on and they do like funny like Taskmaster. So the two hosts of Taskmaster went on an interview recently and they were talking about how people make fan fiction of them, and they were like reading different ones of it out loud, and all I could think of was just like, man, imagine being the person that wrote that fan fiction that is now being read on television, and you're just like, well, fuck.
Well, but that's the thing. Yeah, if they're okay with it, that's
different.
Okay with it.
They're okay with it. They thought it was funny. They genuinely thought it was funny. I can't imagine how people in like One Direction feel, where it's kind of gone to a whole nother space, because that I think is one of the biggest examples of it being like absolutely kind of insane amounts of fan fiction written about these people and them kissing each other. And I'm like, man, I can't imagine, because obviously they probably at this point feel like they're brothers. So imagine like having a whole bunch.
Like aggressively yelled, because like people like they were basically chucking their fan fiction at them in the face. Like it was pretty aggressive for a while.
Yeah. Which I wonder if fan fiction had been more prevalent back in like the early 2000s and the 90s, if we would have like Backstreet Boys
NSYNC
fan fiction, like that level of insanity with NSYNC and Backstreet Boys.
So that reminds me, I was watching like a TikTok of, it was like a compilation of I think the podcast is called The Barnyard Boys. With like, and so like they make a joke, they're like, do you think there's fanfic about us? And then like I was like, first of all, like obviously, but then I go to the comments and everyone's like throwing out like their favorite fanfic
links to their favorite
of them. Of the multiple that exist of them.
There was a similar thing with the Game Grumps recently, where they were making jokes about their own fan fiction that existed as well. Because
I think I heard that.
A lot of fan fiction about Aaron as a lady.
Oh yeah.
But I guess so. My question, I think, then becomes like, when does it become too far? Like, when does shipping people who like may or may not actually be together? When does, like, obviously like fanfic is like the line for some folks, but like, where is it just like here, like putting it down on paper or the internet that it becomes like too much?
I would argue, even though like it makes me uncomfortable, that doesn't mean that it's like morally wrong. It's just not a thing I like. I would argue that it becomes a problem when people are like constantly shoving it down the actual people's throats to the point where like that's like, imagine if every time you were in an interview as like let's say a movie star person, right? Or some type of celebrity, every single interview you had, they're like, oh, have you heard about you and so making out? Like, at that point where like people are just only associating you with your fan fiction, I think that's an issue.
Yeah.
So I guess with that grading scale, then even like aggressive shippers that don't write, or I mean,
That's still an issue. Yeah,
still an issue. Because the reason I asked this is I recently read a manhwa called, it was a webtoon printed manhwa, I Ship My Rival with Me.
Oh, that's not the one I thought you were saying. Never mind. Thought we were talking about there's a villainess one. Continue.
Oh, okay. But but basically like the main character, he is like looking through like his comments and everyone hates him because the other guy's more popular. And then he goes to the other guy's page, and then the other guy's like comments are just filled with like comments about the two of them, like that they're clearly together and stuff. And then so he starts reading like his own fanfic about him and the other guy, and like he becomes a shipper, even though like he's like, I don't have a crush on the guy, but like he's like, I buy into this ship, like everything that you're pointing out, I believe you, I'm in it. And so it's so cute. I'll have to lend you that one because there's no spicy time, so
I love
you'll like it.
No, and that sounds really cute, but I think for a lot of people, that's probably not how that would be interpreted. Because, like, you hear interviews and stuff with, like, people in those situations, and they're like, I'm so tired of telling you that this person is just my friend. Like, it probably becomes very, like, draining and exhausting for you to tell people who you are, and then people to tell you that you're wrong about who you are. And I think that's when it becomes an issue, is when people refuse to believe you on who you are as a person.
When people
when they can't keep it separate.
Yeah, when people start to lose touch with like what is actually real and what is not. It is 100% not appropriate to start to like insinuate that a real person is in love with another real person based on like just kind of these fantasy ideas. Like you need to keep
when
that
the
to yourself.
person's
Otherwise
told you no.
turn into like a weird. Otherwise, you turn into like a weird ass tabloid. You know, like those tabloids that are just it gives
You're just
you
paparazzi.
Kind of exactly. It gives you an icky feeling, and I think there is there's definitely a morality thing there where it's kind of like if a person is uncomfortable with it, right, you're not going to get everybody to stop all of a sudden, you know. And it's kind of, there's always a lot of these questions between, I think really the biggest hard line is when you start to take this fantasy world that is created and bring it back into real life to make these people uncomfortable. Like, do not go up to freaking Jared Padalecki and start talking about how you read a story about how he was making out with the actor that plays Castiel and Dean, one of them. Like it gets really uncomfortable. It gets really icky, especially when these actors have big age differences or
families.
They're already families. It gets really uncomfortable, and a lot of people, especially during there are certain fandoms that are pretty notorious for a lot of this bullshit, and there are like definitely a lot of situations during like panel discussions and stuff where they've had to be like, no, please don't bring this up in a panel. It makes everybody uncomfortable. Please don't. And then they have this really negative view of this fandom. Like a lot of people don't like being associated with certain fandoms anymore because we have a couple of really creepy, weird people.
Oh, no, that's 100% true. I have several times, even not related to fanfiction, but fanfiction is associated. There's a certain video game that I love dearly and desperately that I will not tell people I enjoy playing until I'm good friends with them. Valsaraptor knows exactly what game I'm talking about because the like fans of the game are so not all of them obviously, but there are quite a few that are really gross and really problematic, and it just like it ruins the fun for everyone.
It does.
Yeah,
it does, and it's definitely interesting to look at all of that. I know for a fact there are a handful of like fandoms that I love and that I'm still like I really like, but I don't like to associate myself with them because it's kind of like God, they made it so gross to be a part of there. Like Hetalia had a really gross, weird fandom, and that's because it's also dealing with like historical events and historical people, and it's like it's a really people don't know where the line is. Yeah, people do not know where the line is. My Hero Academia has a weird fandom. Again,
it's true.
There's a lot of shipping, and there are a lot of shipping that is kind of like, can you like don't force it upon other people. Don't get pissed off because he ended up in a straight relationship. All right.
Spoilers.
I didn't say who.
We all knew. We all knew exactly.
I didn't say who.
Oh, okay. Never mind. Not everyone knew.
Not everyone knew. Okay. Don't get pissed off just because.
I'll tell you later.
A character. Listen, that could have been any freaking character in My Hero Academia, okay?
It wasn't, though.
Believe it or not, they all
Post in the chat if you knew who she was talking about.
They all end up in straight relationships.
That was what I was gonna say. I was gonna be like, you know what? Knowing the writers of My Hero Academia, they all end up in these cis heteronormative relationships. It just is what it is.
Or alone.
What it is.
Yeah.
Or alone, I guess.
Exactly. It's a Shonen Jump manga. It's not going to all of a sudden break boundaries of gay relationships in Japan.
It would have been sick though.
Despite having
and that's why we have fanfic.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And again, that's also despite having like such a huge market for BL and stuff like that. Japan is behind in a lot of aspects when it comes to actual gay rights and like accepting things like that. So, but I won't. Are
they par for the course with us now? Who knows?
I was about to say, I don't know that we're much better right now.
We cannot talk right now.
Yeah, let's not.
But we're a safe place. This podcast is a safe place.
Yes,
so
exactly.
If you couldn't tell by like the name of this, podcast.
In case that didn't give it away,
it's
got gays in the name. Just look at us and know.
There to move on? Is there a fan fiction that is like infamous or just famous in your head?
I recently learned about Sonic fanfic. Please elaborate.
You're welcome. Oh yeah, Mim, I taught her all about. She didn't know Sonic was BL fodder. She had no idea the Sonic universe was so full of BL fodder.
I was so pure before.
I informed her. I let her know.
I'm gonna shout out to my friend Toll who lives in Canada who not
doxing people.
Not their real name.
Okay.
Not their real name.
Love it. I also was like, how do we edit quick?
Not their real name in any way. But they also introduced me into Sonic fanfiction. They were a big Sonic fanfiction writer as a youth.
Do they want to be on the podcast? What? Where are they? Hold on.
Told you want to come on and talk about all the Sonic Mpreg you wrote? Like,
yes!
I think just have an episode where they're just reading it. We're just watching Val's reactions to them reading it.
Oh my god!
Please,
I think they would rather dissolve our like decade and a half long relationship than ever
Can't
bring
blame
that up.
them.
I don't want to blame them either. But they introduced me to that. I've never
wear a bag over their head.
Yeah.
I've never even watched a Sonic movie. I've never played a Sonic game. I know zero other than there's an Echidna and there's one named Shadow and
you're killing
Tails. And
3 for 3. 3 for 3. There's also Amy.
What about the bald guy? What about the bald guy with the TikTok
That's
dance?
Eggman
with the TikTok dance. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I know the Echidna's stupid. He's like he's a himbo, essentially. Big dumb himbo.
Himbo.
I love Sonic.
Is Sonic one of your top fanfics on Wattpad?
The only Sonic fanfic I've ever heard was horrible, and it was while watching Game Grumps because they read Sonic fanfiction.
Okay.
And they don't pick good Sonic fanfiction.
Of course not. That's
obviously.
not funny.
No.
They go for comedy. So I've never read quality Sonic fan fiction, but
Everyone
would.
drop your favorite Sonic fanfic in the chat.
Please, I'll read it. And then next episode, I would let people know how it was if I get any.
I have a very important question for you.
Okay.
Yeah.
Me or her?
First off,
Who?
what's the for Doki? What is the echidna's name?
I don't.
The red one.
Oh, Knuckles.
Knuckles.
Yeah.
Okay.
I didn't know what echidna meant. Sorry.
Echidna. That's what he's not a hedgehog. He's an echidna.
Okay.
But does that mean that in fan fiction he is anatomically correct? Because I don't know if you know this, but echidnas got 4. They got 4 of them.
You know what? Knuckles does give 4D energy. Coming at you in 4D. So that's not as shocking to me as I want it to be. As shocking as it is to Val. It's because she doesn't know who Knuckles is. I hope she's not looking up pictures of the real animal. She is. Okay. I don't know, because again, the only fan fiction I consume is not like I don't read I don't read any lemons or anything like that. It's all precious wholesome crap. So the stuff that like I heard them read was inappropriate, but it didn't cross that line where it told us the number of genitalia. Stop looking up pictures, Val.
So I
you
heard
broke
you
her.
say...
She's ruined for the rest of the episode.
Echidnas lay eggs?
Yeah.
They have
and so
4.
No, I haven't gotten to that part of my research yet. So
okay.
Do the in the fanfics they stay canonical to the egg-laying process, or just the physical attribute process? Am I asking about Sonic Impreg right now?
I think so, but I'm confused because what?
Sorry. I'm gonna message my friend. I don't think
we're calling on the experts here.
I don't think they'll be on. But let me message them and see if they get back to me before we end this podcast.
Okay. All right. So we'll move on temporarily, I guess, from Sonic fanfic. But I guess when you were looking up like the popular fanfics, were there any ones that like those who aren't into fanfic would be surprised to hear that there's fanfic about?
Oh, there's fanfic on everything. And a lot of times it can be a joke. So the number 1 highest rated fanfic, I think on, I want to say fanfiction.net or AO3, is a Guardians of the Galaxy fanfiction called I Am Groot. And all it says throughout the entire fanfiction is I Am Groot. That is the entire thing it says. It just says it on repeat over and over and over again.
No, but that's kind of precious though. That's kind of cute. To think that like there's a Groot out there that's writing fanfic, like, because that's the implication, right? You guys are both aggressively researching.
Sorry, I went
Sonic
to Wattpad. I went to Wattpad to see what it said. Their number 1, because it goes by in the area you are, so it shows the top 10 in the U.S.
Okay,
and none of them are like fan fiction. Yeah, none of them are Sonic. None of them are nerdy at all. The top one says,
I am disappointed.
For troubled kids, but like for FOR. And I'm trying to figure out what it's about nymphomania, apparently. So I think it's about people who were in foster care, maybe? I don't know. There's a lot of words here. So like, but like none of the top 10 are anything nerdy at all. It's all just my brother's mafia best friend is number 6. Oh. Like it's stuff like that. A lot of werewolf stuff. A lot of fated mates. Huh.
Okay.
So I heard Doki mention earlier about lemons, and I wanted to get back into that because
lemon. I thought you said Lennon, and I was like, John Lennon. Yes, lemons and limes.
John Lennon.
John Lennon.
I was thinking, yes. But on just right on fanfiction.net, and a lot of people. So in 2002, there was a mass deleting of pornographic content on fanfiction.net. They deleted like everything, even stuff that like even stuff that wasn't pornographic in nature. They deleted anything that could seem inappropriate, anything that had like swear words in the title. 2002 that happened. Everyone was really pissed off, and it quickly got obviously repopulated with that. But people started changing their tags to kind of hide if there were anything, if there was anything going, because you couldn't use tags that explicitly talked about what kind of like sexual conduct was going on in the fan fiction. But they would use things like lemons, limes. They would use fruit salad.
Yeah,
just a fruit
it meant
salad.
Spicy.
Exactly. Lemons was like full on like sex, right? Limes was like.
Oh, is that where Lemon Party came from?
I don't know. I don't.
What?
Nothing. Don't Google it.
Don't Google it.
Don't Google it.
It's a shock website.
Do not.
It's a shock website.
Yeah.
I will not Google it.
It's a shock website. Nope. Don't do it.
I would have to go home.
Yep. Yep.
And
Falls in sick for the rest of the day.
Sorry about games and animes. Can't record that later. I saw scary stuff.
Yep. And fruit and then limes, which is like heavy petting, and then fruit salad was like this is kinky. This is kinky nonsense.
As opposed to sex.
Yeah, this is kinky and sexy. It's every fruit you can imagine. So that kind of helped with yeah, exactly. There's a lot of tagging on there, and obviously there's a lot of plays on that sort of tagging. There was different kinds of tags that people would use, like based on the fruit scale. I think there was even like grapefruit for stuff that was like much more like darker kinks and whatnot. And then once AO3 became a thing, that kind of died off because you could actually tag whatever you wanted. There was no real there's not a lot of there's no censorship really on that website. You can kind of post whatever you want, whatever foul
for better or for worse.
Thing. For better or for worse, there is some foul stuff on there. I'm not sure what in their terms of service, if they have any hard lines of stuff like that, but there is some foul stuff on there. But they also have the real foul stuff. They've changed to dead dove do not eat, which is I have
learned that recently.
It's a really old meme that came from, I want to say, a Reddit post of it was like a Reddit post or an image of somebody who had put there was a bag, it looked like a bagged lunch in the fridge, and it said dead dove do not eat, and somebody took it, opened it, thinking like, oh, it's a joke, somebody's trying to have their lunch, and there was an actual dead dove in the bag. So that's kind of now the tag that a lot of fan fiction writers use to be like, hey, this is going to be some really crazy stuff. Do not read it if you are not prepared. Like, I'm not kidding you. This is what's in here. Just be ready for it. And that's one of the tags I hear about a lot as well. I don't read a lot of it because I'm traumatized easily.
Sidebar. I have gone down a rabbit hole on Reddit that there's a conspiracy theory, and I don't know how valid this conspiracy theory would be, but someone said, I always had a theory that Twilight was basically vampire Inuyasha fanfic.
You know what? I could see it.
And then the reason it got brought up was because 50 Shades of Grey is technically a Twilight fanfic.
Yes.
Hang on. Do you know how 9/11 caused 50 Shades of Grey? Do you know this?
I thought it was something to do.
I'm sorry, what?
Fall Out Boy's involved, right? Or is it My Chemical Romance?
So
one of the big popular boy bands is also involved in this theory. I've heard it before, but I do not recall.
So I believe it goes something. Hang on, I might have to look this up, or somebody might have to correct me. But it's something like 9/11 was what, which is what started the song from Green Day. I think Wake Me Up When September Ends or something like that. Or no, that was his dad dying of cancer. It was something like that. There was a song that came out which inspired Stephanie Meyer to make Twilight, which inspired What's-Her-Face to make Twilight fan fiction, which turned into 50 Shades of Grey.
Well, all I know is if Twilight is fan fiction of Inuyasha, I have the same problem with Twilight that I have with Inuyasha, so that checks out. And it's that poor Koga is still left on the sidelines like a sad potato angel.
Okay.
Also,
Oh,
really
sorry.
quick.
It was Gerard Way, the creator of My Chemical Romance, was
Okay, I knew
inspired
it was
to start
My
the
Chem-
band
okay.
after the Twin Towers fell in 9/11. Stephanie
Mhm.
Meyer was inspired to write Twilight series after hearing My Chemical Romance, and E.L. James was inspired by Twilight to write fan fiction. It was a fan fiction series called originally, I think, The Master of the Universe, based on Twilight, and then that came 50 Shades of Grey. That was the timeline. That was the timeline we lived in.
Yep.
Really quick, to circle back to Lemons and Limes, in Wattpad, it just says there's a tag for mature if it has mature content in it.
Yeah.
But I did appreciate you clarifying the Lemons and Limes, because once I never knew what the difference was. I just knew that it was spicy.
Yeah.
I just knew that those were acidic and I shouldn't read them. I wasn't old enough, even in college.
Even now.
Even now, I'm not old enough. That's all I know.
Someone else put on here, and another one of the spirals that I've gone down, that like, just because fanfic's a pretty loose term, right? They brought up Pride and Prejudice and how there's a bunch of different versions of that.
Pride and Prejudice and Zombies.
And Zombies. Yeah.
Sense and Sensibility and Sea Monsters. Yeah, those are they're so stupid because they're so good.
I wasn't connecting those to being fanfic, but they totally are, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, well, because those novels are so interesting because they literally just took the book and randomly, like, the book is 90% unchanged. There's just randomly paragraphs about zombies, like, intermixed in them. But 90% of the book is the same. There's the movie is also fascinating.
Yes, right.
I mean, you said the same thing with Cinder. Like, now that it is, what is it? It's common domain. It's common domain.
Yeah, it's common domain. So now it's considered a retelling. Public domain. So it's a retelling is what they categorize as, yeah.
So I went on and I looked at, somebody had made a like a word map to see what the most popular tags on AO3 were. And in the non-spicy category, the top tags would be alternate universe, AU, angst, and fluff.
Okay.
Yay, fluff! Woo!
And fluff is literally just stuff that makes you feel happy inside. It's literally just cutesy, adorable romance. It's
where Doki's
pastel. It is the pastel of romance. In the explicit / mature, it would be alpha, beta, omega dynamics, which is Omegaverse.
Yeah.
And then a whole bunch of like a barebacking, bottoming, stuff like that.
Oh, so she can say barebacking, but I can't say bottom?
We're already rated 18. We're already rated 18.
Honestly, yeah. It's the same thing. You can't take my catchphrase from me.
I'm looking at some of these. I'm looking at some of these tags that are a little bit smaller. One of them just says restaurants.
That's the fan fiction I'm reading.
Restaurants.
It's just people eating spaghetti.
Just a Papa John's fanfic.
I walked into the restaurant. I could immediately smell that pizza crust smell.
You could tell they had better ingredients.
Have you seen the TikTok where it's like that, like ass up baby girl, whatever, but people do it with like all kinds of weird things, like their Taco Bell. I'll have to find an example and send it to you. It's like this really sexual voiceover, but they're like showing them like cutting a quesadilla at Taco Bell to it.
Okay.
And that's what I pictured. Sorry. I'll find it. I'll send it.
Good.
Post it in the chat.
So
I don't know how to do that.
All right. AO3 is kind of, the AO3 and Wattpad, I think, are kind of the go-tos at this moment. I know AO3 was started by a person who wrote a lot of fan fiction, but they're also a author, like a published author. They won, they actually got handed a Hugo Award for the creation of AO3.
That's cool.
Yeah, it's pretty funny. I like it. The longest known fan fiction has over 12 million words.
12 million. More than 5. That's a lot of words.
That is, I think, like, if you put together the entire
What's that one about?
I think it's Smash Brothers
Potatoes.
fanfiction. I think it's Smash Brothers fanfiction.
Okay.
What is the longest
checks out.
fanfiction?
I immediately went from Smash Brothers to Smash Mouth to Shrek. So how many Shrek fanfics are there?
Oh, there's a lot. There's
sorry.
a lot.
I'm wrong.
Get out of my swamp.
I'm wrong. It is.
Get into my swamp.
Get into my swamp. Yeah.
It is, according to current information, the longest fanfiction is considered to be The Loud House Revamped, which is an estimated to be over 16 million words long.
That's a lot of words.
I don't even know that many words.
That's true. I'll vouch for that.
Me staring at something in Japanese. I can't read this.
Yeah. I've never been to Japan, so. I love how focused Mim is.
Yeah, she's in the zone.
It cracks me up though, because I feel like most people when they're focused, they're like this, and Mim's like, gotta consume everything. Her eyes are like.
Yeah, she's like
so wide.
When you're like seeing a stereotypical hacker on a TV show or something, and they're like eyes open, like super focused, like darting side to side. There's a bunch of clacking. What's Mim right now?
So it would hang on. I had to do some math here. So like, please forgive me.
Oh, that explains the focus.
It's the focus. So 1 million words roughly would be about 4,000 page book. This is 16 million words. So 16 times 4,000.
How big is a book?
I think it's like an average
this
size
big
sort of book. Right.
That's a book. That's not a book.
Oh my god.
So how many Lord of the Rings is that?
That's a couple.
Just kidding. You don't have to answer. You don't have to answer that. I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding.
How many hobbits is?
That is. Oh my god, that's a lot of writing. Which again leads me back to like it's insane that it's like it's seen as kind of like this very juvenile
lesser
thing. Yeah, I'm like, this person literally wrote the entirety of like 6 different encyclopedia length series, I should say. Like, if you an encyclopedia is probably not even 1,000 pages.
Encyclopedias?
No, but like I'm trying to think
Somebody's
of a large
to.
book. Okay.
No,
but I'm trying to go a large book.
No, that had nothing to do. I wasn't like judging your use of word. I just was genuinely curious if encyclopedias still existed.
Yeah, I think they do in like libraries and stuff. But I don't think people use them anymore.
Libraries maybe have them?
I don't think you're going to buy an encyclopedia set at Barnes & Noble anytime soon.
I know what I'm getting Mim for Christmas next year.
There you go.
Encyclopedia fanfiction.
Yep.
Speaking of buying things, I know when we talked about it, but I know this might have been the legality thing you were talking about earlier while I was distracted because of a technical issue on the sound front. But I've seen a lot of TikToks, and I know you mentioned it too, of people binding fanfic.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So that goes into a whole legal issue because the fan fiction is, again, in this gray area where it is derived work. So legally, it is, again, in this gray area where if you are like Anne Rice went on a warpath, and that's why you'll never really find a lot of Anne Rice fan fiction, because she went on a warpath and like
who's she? What'd she do?
Anne Rice wrote Interview with a Vampire.
Oh.
She Interview with a Vampire.
I know that one.
Yeah. She wrote a lot of vampire books. She was like, Stephanie Meyer before Stephanie Meyer, minus the weird Mormon sex
undertones,
baby stuff there. But she Interview with a Vampire, and obviously it's vampires, so everyone wrote a ton of fan fiction, and Anne Rice went on a warpath across fanfiction.net and sent cease and desist letters to people writing fan fiction. And she's not the only one. I think there are other people, like other fandoms, that are kind of like known for not accepting fan fiction. Like people they'll come after them with copyright issues, but for the most part, everyone's fine with it. But when you start binding books, it's technically you're selling copywritten characters to be bound into books. So it's this weird area where you could end up getting these fan fiction writers in trouble.
Yeah.
Because it's usually not the fan fiction writers that are binding. It's usually somebody who's like really in love with this story who wants it in a book form, which totally understandable. There are so many ones that I would love to have in a book form, but it's
where it's like you have to find it and print it and then find someone to bind it for you and then pay them for the binding services, but like you can't